There is just one Abba in terms of music, style, and hair. Benny Andersson has been a legendary musician for decades, even after decades of going their own way. He contributed tunes that people all around the globe can't stop bopping to because he was a co-creator of Abba. But beneath all the glitz and top charting, however, things weren't always rosy. After Abba broke up, Benny had private problems with his family and life that only a select few fans knew about. Because he wanted the music to do the talking, he kept most of it under wraps. At 78 years old, nonetheless, Benny has spoken out about the facts regarding her, regarding his history, and with the current situation with Abba. Come with us as we examine Benny's story in detail, beginning with his confession and ending with his triumph. In the beginning, there was music. Benjamin Andersson came into this world on December 16, 1946 in the Vasan neighborhood of Stockholm. His mom, Layla, and dad, Gasta Andersson, were both civil engineers. Eva-Lise, his younger sister, was born in 1948. He had a natural talent for music. The accordion was a family instrument, passed down through generations of his family. While Benny was 6 years old, they gave him an accordion when he was a little boy and exposed him to traditional Swedish music, folk music, and a style known as schlager. His appreciation for music of all genres blossomed rapidly. His initial record collection consisted of jailhouse rock by Elvis Presley and dubis music by Caterina Valente. In particular, like the flip side track, Treat Me Nice, because to its piano accompaniment. He would be profoundly affected by this eclectic blend of musical styles throughout his life. Benny got his hands on a piano when he was 10 years old and proceeded to teach himself to play. Artists such as Brian Jones served as an inspiration to him. He quit school at the age of 15 and began performing at youth clubs since he was uninterested in being a student. Christina Granville, his first girlfriend, was someone he met about this period. Peter was born in 1963 and Helen was born in 1965, their 2 children together. Benny and Christina were members of Elverit's Spelman Slag, the folk music group from the Power Board, in the beginning of 1964. A light-hearted jab at their electric instruments inspired the moniker. Songs like Baby Elephant Walk and others that are mostly instrumental were the norm. Benny started penning his debut singles, Rising Fame and the Hepstars, around this time. When Benny became the keyboardist for the musical group the Hepstars in October 1964, his career took off. The band's breakthrough came a short while later, in March 1965, with the single Music by Cadillac. In the 60s, the Swedish pop band The Hears rose to prominence rapidly. In addition to being the group's keyboard player, Benny became a teenage idol and the driving force behind the band's songs. From their early days, the band primarily performed cover versions of worldwide smashes, but Benny quickly started penning their tunes as well. No Response, Sunny Girl, Wedding, Consolation, It's Nice to Be Back, and She Will Love You are just a few of the band's popular songs that he contributed to. Both their sense of self and Benny's ability to write catchy music were demonstrated by these tracks. Benny encounters Björn Ulfs. Soon after meeting in June 1966, the two started penning music together. Their initial single was a cover of Isn't It Easy to Say that the Hepstars would go on to record. Benny collaborated with Lasseberg Hogan on a number of tunes. The Hedge Clown entry was one of theirs that took second place at the 1969 Melody Festival finals of the Eurovision Song Contest in Sweden. There was still another manner in which the occurrence altered Benny's life. He quickly became romantically involved with singer Annie Frid Lingat. When Björn met vocalist Agnetha Falskog, it was around the same period. The tight cooperation that developed between the four of them in the years that followed was a natural outgrowth of their personal bonds. In 1969, Benny and Björn had their first success as songwriters with Britta Borg's Luva Sexatal and the Heap Stars Spellman. With each couple's assistance, the recording sessions, Benny and Björn were influenced to form their group by popular mixed vocal acts of the era because to the impressive combination of Agnetha and Annie Fred's talents. Annie Fred and Benny's bond deepened through shared musical experiences. Her 1971 first album, Frida, and her 1969 single, Peter Pan, were both produced by him. she occupied herself with. While Agnetha was starring in the 1972 Swedish production of Jesus Christ Superstar, she was also reviewing and performing in cabaret events in Stockholm. In the early 1970s, the four of them were already lending each other financial and promotional support as they began to build the groundwork for what would later become Abba. Their debut performance as a quartet occurred in April 1970 when visiting Cyprus. While they were just having fun on the beach, their performance evolved into an unexpected concert for the UN troops stationed there. At about the same time, Benny and Bjorn were in the studio working on their debut collaborative album, Lycka, which featured backup vocals from Agnetha and Annie Fred on multiple tracks. Fest Focus, which literally means party people, but may also refer to engaged couples, was their stage act that they debuted later that year. On November 1, 1970, at Gothenburg, they premiered it. Almost all of the reviews were unfavorable, with the exception of how well they played Hedgeham Man. Their debut single together, Hello Old Man, became a smashing success. The Bjorn and Benny credited single peaked at number 5 on the sales charts and spent 15 weeks atop Svenskapen. The four began touring and collaborating more frequently in 1971, singing backing vocals on each other's tunes. The voices of Agnetha and Annie Fred became more prominent in the subsequent singles released by Benny and Bjorn, such as Date kan ingen doktor helpa no doctor can help with that, and Tank om Jordan Vorong. In the summer of 1971, after getting married, Agnetha and Bjorn began performing regularly with Benny at Swedish folk festivals. The CEO of Polar Music, Parks Andersson, was a firm believer in Benny and Bjorn's ability to become international superstars. He pushed them to keep writing, and after a few scrapes, they competed in the 1972 Melodifestivalen with the song Sagd Date Met and Sung Say It, which went on to become a Swedish success and placed third. After that, their 1972 single, She's My Kind of Girl, unexpectedly reached number 10 in Japan. With the June 1972 release of People Need Love, which featured Agnetha and Annie Fred more prominently, the actual spark occurred. The credit for it went to Annie Fred, Bjorn, Benny Agnetha, and Benny. Even though it only peaked at number 17 in Sweden, that was sufficient evidence of their exceptional talent. In fact, it reached the US charts, which was a minor milestone on the road to ABBA's eventual global fame. The initials ABBA were born with the ringing of a bell. During a journey to West Germany that same year, Agnetha's daughter Linda was born, and Ingebrunn was temporarily substituted for her. It was about this time that manager Stig Andersson came to the conclusion that the band required a moniker change. In a light-hearted reference to a Swedish fish canning company of the same name, he started referring to them as Abba. So long as the group didn't bring disgrace upon the company, they were given the green light. By the end of 1973, the initials Abba, which were the initials of each member's first name, had made their way onto studio documentation. Benny inadvertently held his letter the wrong way during a picture shoot a few years later, prompting the creation of their famous emblem with the backwards B. Finished product. Through 1976, the mirrored B had become an indelible aspect of ABBA's persona. The years of the breakthrough with Waterloo. A return invitation to Melody Die Festival came ABBA's way in 1974. Inspired by the British glam rock era, they settled on the energetic Waterloo. They came prepared and with greater experience this time. They triumphed in the Swedish selection on February 9, 1974, and went on to win the Eurovision Song Contest crown on April 6, 1974, with an English performance. Across Europe, doors were opened by the win. Waterloo peaked at number 6 in the United States and number 1 in 9 other countries. They enjoyed moderate success with their second hit, Honey Honey. Their label, however, opted to re-release Ring Ring in the UK. Some started to question whether they were simply a one-hit wonder. Not all of their European concerts sold out in late 1974, thus they had to cancel a few. When they toured Scandinavia in early 1975 and played to sold-out crowds, everything changed. Singles like SOS and MMA Mia, which they kept releasing, were huge hits across Europe. In addition to Australia, Countdown on TV helped propel their music to the top of the charts in Australia. There was a 10-week reign of dominance for Mamma Mia. Many countries began to recognize Abba by early 1976. Despite the fact that penetrating the US, the album market remained challenging. Fernando was a new single that appeared on Abba's Greatest Hits, which debuted at #1 in the UK in March 1976. With over 10 million copies sold globally and at the top of the charts in 13 different countries, it quickly became one of their most successful singles to date. Arrival, which was released later that year, catapulted them to even greater popularity. The album featured the singles Knowing Me, Knowing You, Money, 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 and their biggest success, Dancing Queen, which reached the top of the charts around the world, including in the US. Their 1977 launch occurred in January. Their maiden world tour, which began in Norway and continued through Europe and Australia. There, in spite of obstacles like torrential rain and even a bomb scare in Perth, they performed for enormous audiences. The film Abba chronicles the band's electrifying Australian trip. The movie and record Abba were both released before the end of 1977. Vals Vu, which Abba recorded in part at the world-renowned Criteria Studios in Miami, was then released in April 1979. Hits such as Chiquitita, I Have a Dream, and Does Your Mother Know were featured. As the Unattached, didn't all top the UK charts, but they were huge in Belgium and wherever else they went. Gimme 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 and A Man After Midnight were also featured on that year's Best Hits album, Walden 2. The Abba tour in North America kicked off in September 1979. The United States of America performing in front of arenas that are completely sold out. 6 nights at Wembley Arena in London was one stop on the tour's European leg. Their last major tour was in 1980, when they played 11 sold-out performances in Japan. When they published The Winner Takes It All in July of that year, many assumed it was about Bjorn and Agnese's split, despite their denials that it was concerning an individual. With over 1 million pre-orders, Super Trooper shattered UK records upon its release in November. Their last UK #1 was the title track. The Spanish-language album Gracias por la Musa, which Abba recorded around the same time, gained a new fan base in Latin America after becoming wildly successful there. There was more to come from their journey, even if their music had already gone global. The guests and the start of the final chapter. The marriage of Bjorn Ulvaeus and Lena Kyrjo took place in January 1981. Stig Andersson, manager of Abba, turned 50 years old. The band created a unique song named Hoves Vitna in honor of his birthday. This album is among the rarest from Abba because just 200 red vinyl copies were produced and distributed to guests. Annie Fred Lyngstad and Benny Andersson announced their divorce less than a month after that. Their troubled marriage had been public knowledge for some time, and by November of that year, Benny had met and married Mona Norlet. Andersson and Ulvaeus resumed songwriting in early 1981 despite personal hardships, and the quartet was back in the studio by March. They shot Dick Cavett Meets in April, the Abba TV special. Later that year, in 1981, they released a new album titled The Visitors. Issues like as aging, political oppression, broken relationships, and the loss of innocence were explored on this more reflective album. Secret gatherings to oppose dictatorial regimes were even alluded to in the title track. Executive branches. The album's one big single, One of Us, was Abba's last top 3 smash in the UK and their last German #1. Although it failed to replicate its prior commercial success in nations like Japan, France, and Australia, the album topped the charts in other European countries. After more songs were published in North America, When All Is Said and Done became Abba's last US top 40 smash. It dealt with the topic of separation as well, but with a more optimistic tone. Speculation about group tensions increased when the news of Benny and Frida's divorce became public. Issues with recording and last singles. New songwriting sessions were initiated by the group in the spring of 1982. A new album and even a mini-tour were being discussed. Unfortunately, things started to get tricky in May and June. 3 songs were all that were recorded. One is Due to You, I Am, The Metropolis, and suddenly Benny and Bjorn weren't pleased with the outcomes. So, the band put the recordings on hold and went on a summer vacation. Plans were revised in August. Rather than releasing a brand new album, they opted to put out a Christmas compilation titled The Singles, The First 10 Years, which would have all their earlier singles, along with a few new compositions. The Day Before You Came, B-side, Cassandra, and Under Attack, B-side, You Owe Me, were released in October and December, respectively. While both Under Attack and The Day Before You Came reached number 5 in several European countries, they failed to do so in the United Kingdom. 21st place. In contrast, the compilation album was a smashing success in several European nations, including the Netherlands and Germany, and even reached number 1 in Belgium and the United Kingdom. As it turned out, Under Attack was ABBA's last single before they broke up. At long last, in 1993, I Am the City was released. Though, despite several demands from fans, the entirety of Just Like That was never released. The musical chess is one of few that used altered versions of it. The full ABBA version has shown up on bootlegs for years, but Benny and Bjorn still won't release it. Farewell performances to promote the first decade of singles. ABBA made an appearance on Saturday Superstore and the Late Late Breakfast Show whilst in London in November 1982. They traveled to West Germany the week after to appear on Show Express. For the date of on the Swedish show Nöjes Massanen in November 1982, they made their last television appearance. Then, they gave their final joint performance on December 11, 1982. The Late Night Breakfast Show with Noel Edmonds in the United Kingdom aired this live from a TV studio in Stockholm. As a result, a chapter in the history of one of the most famous pop groups in the world came to a close. Both love stories were pivotal in ABBA's formation. ABBA was more than simply a group of pop stars with memorable tunes and dazzling stage outfits. Their status was two couples who actually exist. Along with Annie Frida Lyngstad, Agneth Falskog was accompanied by Bjorn Ulvaeus and Benny Andersson. Part of what made ABBA so appealing in the 70s was the romance stories they sang about. The notion that the performers may go home together after a night of love songs was a huge hit with the audience. At night. In 1968, Agnetha crossed paths with Bjorn during his time with the Hoot Aini Singers. They tied the knot in July 1971, and Benny played the organ for the ceremony. They welcomed a son, Peter, in 1977, and a daughter, Linda, in 1973. Fame, however, was not always kind. Their marriage was tested by the continual demands of touring. Their breakup occurred in 1979, when ABBA was at the top of her game. Agnetha later remarked that therapy was necessary because the separation was so difficult for her. Bjorn allegedly dated Lena again. Hello, Kurjo. 1 week later, Agnetha sang Bjorn's The Winner Takes It All around this time, and she confessed that it was an emotionally draining performance, but she gushed, "It was fantastic." Obviously, we all know there are no such things as happy divorces, especially when there are children involved. Benny and Frida's story began in 1969 and they were living together by the time they told the media it was a happy divorce. However, Agnetha later said, "I could put such feeling into that song." 1971, October 1978, while ABBA was performing at their top, was when they tied the knot. They did, however, split up in 1980, only 2 years later. The true reason became apparent, although Benny insisted to reporters that they were friends. He wed TV producer Mona Norlet, whom he had met before. The year 1981. As far as Frida was concerned, they had resolved to be forthright about their issues. She went on to say, "We just outgrew each other. Breaking up became a necessity." She drew parallels to the story of Agnetha and Bjorn, who had attempted to continue performing together after their breakup in ABBA, but the dynamic had altered. Both marriages had ended by 1982, and with them came the end of ABBA's golden run, the period immediately after the breakups. In the years following ABBA's disbandment, Bjorn and Benny continued to be extremely productive and successful, penning the smash musical Chess, collaborating on the stage and screen adaptations of Mamma Mia, and producing music for other artists. Frida and Agnetha's lives diverged, away from the limelight and rife with personal challenges. Agnetha suffered from stage fright, a dread of flying, and the anguish of being apart from her children while tours. Their popularity and fortunes continued to increase, with each being valued hundreds of millions. After her breakup with Bjorn, she dated a number of men, including a psychiatrist who had previously attempted to salvage her marriage and a detective who had been protecting her children from kidnapping attempts, both of which contributed to her lack of self-assurance in social situations due to her timidity and inferior English compared to the others. She secretly remarried in 1990 to surgeon Thomas Sonnenfeld. They separated 3 years later. Tragically, her mother committed suicide, and a year later, her father passed away. Agnetha grew increasingly reclusive, shunning the spotlight and even music. She later confessed, "I felt I could not resist anymore," to the bizarre relationship she started with Go van der Graaf, a Dutch enthusiast who had pursued her for years. "Meeting him was important to me." The romance came to a disastrous end when G returned to her After her marriage ended, Agnetha sought court protection and subsequently relocated to a remote area of Sweden, where she lived in isolation, drawing inspiration from the life of Swedish legend Greta Garbo, quoting, "I want to be alone," until her breakup. She avoided music altogether for a long time, before shocking listeners in 2004 with a new album, My Coloring Book, and then disappearing from view once more. Frida's narrative was one of loss and transformation. Her father was a German soldier and her mother was a Norwegian. Signe met her father, Alfred, a married Wehrmacht sergeant, when she was 16 years old. They had a brief affair because, during the war, food was scarce and he gave her a sack of potatoes. Frida was born in 1945, but her father was sent back to Germany before they could meet. Signe escaped to Sweden with baby Frida and her mother Ane, facing public shame in Norway. Sadly, Signe died of renal disease at the age of 21, leaving Frida to be raised by her grandmother. In her childhood, she believed her. The father had drowned, and a reunion was set up in 1977 when his niece recognized her from an interview. Nevertheless, the meeting was brief, and Frida remarked, "It's difficult to get a father when you're 32 years old." Frida had been through 2 marriages and a divorce by the time she met Benny in 1969. She had children from her first marriage. She wed Benny in 1978, but they split up in 1981, and it saddened her to see him marry someone else so soon. After Abba broke up, she lived in London and Switzerland. In 1992, she became the wife of German aristocracy. She became Princess Annefrid of Reuss, a peaceful and honored figure. However, sorrow befell her in 1998, when her 30-year-old daughter was killed in a vehicle accident in New York. The following year, her husband Prince Heinrich passed away from cancer. Frida chose to withdraw from public life, citing her faith as a reason. With the help of Viscount Hamilton, heir to the W.H. Smith fortune, she has recently found happiness in Zaret, Switzerland. The long road to reunion. Following Abba's breakup, the concept of a reunion became the most questioned question in music. They declined a rumored $1 billion in the early 2000s for a concert series and, for decades, only appeared together at infrequent events like Mamma Mia, musical, and film premieres. However, in 2018, something changed, and the 4 of them started discussing the possibility of collaborating. I looked around and I looked into Agnieszka's eyes and Frida's eyes, and there was the same kind of feeling, the warmth and the friendship. Bjorn recalled from their first day back in the studio, describing how this grew into a full album, Voyage, released in 2021 from just 2 new songs, as well as the ties. They also revealed a cutting-edge concert experience in London with digital avatars, offering fans a fresh perspective on the band. ABA Voyage, a contemporary venue for classic music, debuted in 2022, and it's not your ordinary performance. Instead of the band playing live, in this holographic show, fans can see digital recreations of the 4 members as they appeared during their peak in the 1970s. The show takes place in a specially built arena in London's Stratford Queen Elizabeth Park, which hosted the 2012 Olympics. The set list features many beloved songs by the audience, such as Dancing Queen, Waterloo, and Mamma Mia, and the. A new report claims that Abba Voyage has injected £322 million into the British economy, with over 1 million tickets sold at prices as high as £181.50, and it's not just the figures that are impressive. The high-tech production makes it feel as though Abba are right there in the room. In celebration of the third anniversary, which begins on May 27th, the production added a little something to the set list, providing returning guests a fresh cause to come back and keeping Abba's song alive for new generations while giving long-standing fans a nostalgic delight. The absence of Agnetha Fältskog and Björn Ulvaeus from the anniversary celebration was felt, but the emotional touch was added by Benny and Frida's presence. It was a reminder that ABBA's story is being written not only through their music, but also in moments like these, when on May 27, 2025, at Abba's Voyage concert in London, the present and the past intertwined. During the performance, Benny Andersson, who is now 78 years old, and Frida Lyngstad, who was his wife and bandmate, both shared some deeply moving remarks. In an unexpected appearance to celebrate the concert's third anniversary, the audience went absolutely crazy when they caught sight of the couple in the balcony, a sight they hadn't seen since their marriage ended more than 40 years ago. Frida, dressed in a stylish cream outfit, and Benny, in a printed blazer, stood shoulder to shoulder as the applause erupted. Captivated the crowd. Frida, who took the microphone first, grinned brightly and proclaimed, "I love you very much. All of your help over the years is much appreciated. To think that it was nearly half a century ago is mind-boggling. I'm turning 80 this year," she said, her voice filled with laughter, which sparked even louder applause. Her words felt like a bridge across the years, acknowledging the long journey from ABBA's beginnings to this moment. Benny then stepped up and instead of a serious comment, he lightened the mood with a playful, "Two men walk into a pub," getting Frida laughing out loud. For admirers, it was more than a joke, it was a nod to their comfortable rapport and shared history. They had met in 1969, moved in together shortly after, and got married in 1978, when ABBA's celebrity was at its peak. Their marriage had already ended by 1980, and the divorce was completed the following year. Benny said, "Frida and I are still friends," when asked about the difficulty of remaining married while being a member of one of the world's largest bands. "We settled on remaining a unit in order to honor the music. We just evolved from one another," Frida remarked truthfully. "There were many arguments, many tears, and ultimately the realization that there was no turning back on the relationship, so we broke up." Benny Andersson and Björn are causing a stir on Broadway, and their appearance at Voyage was a kind of public gesture that felt like a subtle revelation about the amount of respect and affection that still exists between them. Abba Voyage is playing to sold-out crowds in London, and later in 2025, two of their most notable theater sensations Mamma Mia and Chess will be running simultaneously. Mamma Mia first opened in 1999 in London and moved to Broadway in 2001. Since then, it has been watched by more than 70 million people in 50 productions in 16 languages. It became the 10th longest-running musical on Broadway, playing for 14 years with 5,773 performances. Chess, which was co-created in the 1980s, will join it on Broadway, highlighting the enduring strength of Benny and Björn's partnership, a show that has played more than 7 billion performances and grossed more than $7 billion. It returns to the Winter Garden Theatre for a limited run from August 2, 2025, to February 1, 2026. Enduring connection that has flourished despite ABBA's split and personal difficulties, further linking their music to countless fans across the globe. In your opinion, were ABBA's marriages and divorces the primary causes of the band's dissolution, or would the dissolution have occurred regardless? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section and hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you next time with more amazing tales from the intriguing history of Hollywood.